Across the globe, biological farming has a growing band of followers. Some have found it means less input costs, others have embraced it because it works in closely with nature. But most who've turned to biological farming believe it's the most practical way to improve the health of their soil. This is part 2 of Tim Lee's special feature on biological farming.
Success in the thoroughbred industry is measured by the number of winners and the worth of their winnings. Lucrative prize stakes ensure fierce competition amongst racehorse breeders, trainers and owners. Like everyone in the industry, bloodstock breeder Christoph Bruechert is striving for a competitive edge.
I guess it starts from the ground up. If your soil's healthy, then your pasture should be healthy, and then if your pasture's healthy, your animals will be too.
Christoph Bruechert believes horses thrive best on a diverse pasture diet.
The rangeland animals that were on the move all the time and eating a broad range of different species, they didn't have someone throwing them a feed morning and night. So I think if you can, put your money into your ground, you'll get it back tenfold. That's just a figure I pulled out of the air, but you'll get it back.
But the sharp teeth and hard hooves of horses can be hard on pastures. That's why when he bought his property at Bitton, south of Melbourne in 2000, he turned to biological farming.
They're hard on the soil and there is a problem with compaction. The more organic matter you can put back into your soil and the more microbes working that and then worms going through it eating the microbes, the more porous your soil is. So, if you can get that healthy enough, you don't have to do anything about compaction. I have aerated this place but on several occasions, but the less time you can spend in a tractor wasting diesel, the better. So if you can get the natural systems working for you.
3 years ago, Christoph Bruechert was partly down the biological farming path. The pastures had just endured a week of solid, suffocating heat.
We haven't had rain here for 2 months to speak of. You feel how much moisture's in that. I mean, if it wasn't for that bit of mulch, you wouldn't get a pitchfork into that.
It's a stark contrast to this year's lush season.
So what's been your regime on this? You've put no outside fertilisers on?
No, we've relied on the organic teas or biodynamic teas and minerals, and we've put out a liquid lime. This year we're intending to put out rock phosphate for the first time we've had any phosphate application on this place in 12 years now.
Well, Rob, just explain what the process is here.
This is our compost tea brewer.
Compost tea, another name for a liquid fertiliser, is one of the key differences between biological farming and more conventional farming practices that use fertilisers such as superphosphate that come in small hard pellets.
There's still a great deal of confusion about exactly what is biological farming. Some people like to explain it as being simply a return to what our forefathers would have done long before we came to rely on chemicals.
It's this dark green and lush. There's not a need for nitrogen on my farm. Does not exist in that 6 grass crops in a row. Here's our system.
Gary Zimmer, a world-leading exponent and educator on biological farming, was in Australia recently. He says that definition is only partly accurate.
Was my grandfather a biological farmer? And yes, he didn't have the chemicals and tools, but he also didn't understand biology. He was plowing and digging and disking, and because he was in battle with the weeds, he was in battle with the insects, and so he didn't have the tools and the technology we have today, and just the use of the fertilizers and how we put them together and the mineral balance and the equipment we have to farm today is quite incredible.
Grandpa no doubt would have loved this newfangled machine that puts the wind up the soil, quite literally.
We call it the soil puffer machine, but its sort of official title is a ground probe aerator. So it's a hydraulically driven spear that punches through our compaction layer. We've found a compaction layer at about 50 centimetres. And sort of that's where the soil profile changes a bit, So it's a natural one, but probably enhanced by the machinery driving over and things like that. So this spear punches a hole through it, and then compressed air is blown out from underneath, so it breaks up that compaction layer and creates a lot softer soil for the roots to grow in.
It's the latest innovation by Bortoli Wines in its conversion to biological farming. Three years ago, when the winery made the change, the clouds were swirling and a storm was brewing over the spectacular Yarra Valley. There was something else brewing among the lush vines of this renowned wine region. Compost piles being made to a recipe using organic matter.
A combination of woody components, so wood chips and sawdust and stalks from our grapes. Green components, hay and crops that we've used, grass clippings, things like that. And the grape mark, which is essentially the grape seeds that are a waste product from the winery.
Add water and provide some aeration. Allow them to get to an optimal temperature, and the fermenting piles become the perfect nursery for some remarkable microorganisms. A high temperature kills off weed seeds and unwanted pathogens.
This is a young Shiraz block we've got here, and we've planted oats, and it's got a bit of barley.
Family-owned Bortoli Wines is one of the giants of the Australian wine industry. Its move to biological farming for its Yarra Valley vineyards is being closely watched by others in the industry.
So it's essentially, we're starting off with the smallest building blocks and then allowing nature to take its course and then build itself up to make the vine healthier.
The past few years have been tough for Australia's winemakers. Low wine prices and long years of drought have seen many leave the industry. By contrast, the wet year, 1,200 millimetres fell here in the past 12 months, made life difficult for this year's vintage. It caused mildew and other problems, but the worms and the microscopic creatures of the soil simply loved it.
We measure all the different parameters in the soil, so the soil biology, the soil nutrients, the chemistry in the soil, and the soil physics, the structure of the soil. What we've seen since 2008, since we've been using biological composts and compost tea and sort of foods for those organisms to grow, is that in the past year we've had a fourfold increase in our earthworm numbers. A fair bit of that's due to soil moisture changes, but essentially we've gone from 2 million worms per hectare up to 8 million worms per hectare. And that's a lot of soil building and tunnelling and sort of aeration going on as well.
Despite tough seasons, the two past vintages have been among the best in the winery's history. Rob Sutherland believes healthier soil and healthier vines means more flavoursome wine. Like most farmers who change to biological farming, potato grower Wayne Tymensen's reason for changing is the one most commonly heard: soil health.
We've got some farmland that we hasn't had potatoes for 30, 40 years, and it grew very good potatoes the first year, and then after several years you see issues coming up, so we think there's more to it.
This is in the summer of 2009, when the crop yielded well despite exceptionally hot weather. This year, however, a deluge and subsequent prolonged waterlogging all but destroyed his crop. So for the time being, it's impossible to measure the progress of biological farming.
Now you got a complex carbon going in.
But Gary Zimmer predicts we'll see big changes in what we consider to be conventional farming methods.
I think that's the rapid change in agriculture, is that what's achievable out here. We've seen 50% increases in yields on a lot of our crops in the United States, and we just get with a lot less input. And I think that's a big driving force behind it, the cost, and everybody worried about phosphorus is running out, nitrogen is getting expensive, and chemicals, and so their cost has gone so high, and that's the other driving force. We can produce a whole lot more per acre with a less input per bushel or per pound or per whatever we're producing.
Even if you dispute that claim, what is undeniable is the unprecedented mainstream interest in soil health.
The emphasis has been on yield, very much, and we haven't really thought too much about whether the soils really do have the capacity to produce, optimum or maximum levels of yield. And I think that's because we've been able to support with a lot of energy inputs. We've been able to support agriculture through fertilizers and other chemicals that have helped the production process and have greatly expanded production. But unfortunately, our soils in many cases aren't able to keep up. And so we've seen an overall trend in soil condition, an overall downward trend in soil condition as a result.
Other Australian wineries are evaluating the benefits of biological farming methods. The initial work at Bortoli was carried out by Tony Evans, who we met on the program last week. Tony Evans and Nick Routson began a composting business using waste products from 2 Western Victorian dairy factories. And it's the dairy sector that has been the keenest adopter of biological farming. Camperdown Composting Company expects to have about 50 dairy farmers on its books next year.
We really try hard to do the best we can for our soil and for the future custodians of the vineyard, to make sure that they've got a good platform to build on.
Christoph Bruechert is gradually seeing the undesirable plant species drop out, and his pastures becoming much more robust and productive.
A farmer should be interested in his soil, love his soil, and the plants that grow in it. And if you're keen enough, you look at it literally from the ground up.
The final vital ingredient is patience.
It's something that takes time to accumulate. It's not an overnight fix. So if somebody were to go this way and expect an instant result, then it's not for them.